We have expectations about fantasy writers that they spend a lot of time wandering around their fantasy worlds, in their heads or in their notebooks, harking back to, Emily and Anne Bronte's Gondal and writers like D.M. Cornish of the Monster Blood Tattoo books, who actually wrote the world of those books in journals and with drawings, because he was actually an illustrator originally, and just had this whole completely created, fleshed out world before he began writing the novels. But in fact, you start with character, which is not always what we expect of a fantasy novel. And this also surprised me a little bit, perhaps because the worlds of your novels, the Seven Kingdoms of Graceling and the Dells of Fire, are so richly in their detail, from the geography to the kind of political structure, and the cultural practices as well. So let's talk about that. Where your stories start with the characters. How do those characters come to you? And then what happens from there in terms of plotting the story?
Right, well, I would say, I think when I'm reading the character, and that's probably why when I began to write, I'm writing the character. For me, a book works if I believe in the people, and if there's something about them that attracts me or that repulses me or that I can really kind of, get behind. And with Graceling, for example, what happened is that Ketsa and Poe and Raffin kind of came, to me, and they were kind of knocking on the doors of my mind, and I was listening into their conversations, and they were having fights, and they were angry, and it was clear that they loved each other, but there was fury and anger. And so at the beginning of that book, the genesis of that book was me trying to figure out, why are these people so angry with each other? What happened? What is this betrayal that I feel has happened? And it's kind of like everything about the book spiraled out from that. And you're definitely right that the world did not come first, and as a result, especially the world of Graceling, is full of cracks, full of holes that I see, and that I'm also now stuck with because I'm still writing in that world. So, can you give us an example? Oh God, well, because well, for example, I guess maybe this isn't necessarily an example of a crack or but one frustration I'm dealing with right now is that, so in Graceling, at a certain point, Ketsa and Poe are on this journey, and they were moving too fast. I needed them to slow down so that the plot would unfold the way I wanted it to. And so in order to slow them down, I decided, well, okay, I better throw up like an impenetrable forest that they have to pass through and like an uncrossable mountain. That'll slow them down. But that means that now I'm writing Bitter Blue, and I need, the plot of Bitter Blue requires kind of quick travel between places, but everyone has to deal with this mountain and this forest, and I just, Graceling kind of, I made up the landscape as I went along, and it depended on what the plot required. Yeah. And as a result, I don't know, I'm just, when I look at it, I see it, I feel that it's messy, and I feel that it doesn't necessarily hold together. Whereas when I began Fire, I was still reeling from like the horror of that experience. So I knew, okay, let's think this through. And I really, with Fire, was trying to use the landscape to help create the mood of the book. And I feel like I captured that world a little better. Of course, then I made other mistakes with that one that I then, am now trying to correct with Bitter Blue. It's just never ending. Like, you go into every book thinking, I know how to do it now, because I did it before. But each book has its own new thing that surprises you. If you knew what you were getting into, you wouldn't get into it, so it's probably for the best. Mm-hmm.